Welcome to Signs of Life, exploring survival of consciousness. Brought to you by Forever Family Foundation. On the web at foreverfamilyfoundation.org.
I call your name. The echo is haunting. The echo is always the same. I call your name. The echo is haunting. An echo can never be changed. So I call your name. Your name.
Right. Hello. Good evening, everybody. I'm Roman Karpishka. Welcome to Signs of Life, Radio's Medium Insights Hour. As your host, I get to interview a whole bunch of really cool mediums on a variety of topics related to consciousness, spirituality, and the afterlife. And we're doing something a little bit different today. We got the video on, so Catherine has graciously agreed to have her video on too. She's our guest tonight, Cathy Nadal. And I have my video on. That's my background. This is my recording studio. I got full of guitars and my band practices here and everything. So I figured, hey, why not? Put a face to the face to the voice. So this is going to be interesting. So again, our show is commercial free. So sit back, relax, have a drink on us, curl up with a loved one, pet, or or a good book or a good blanket, and just let us take over your imagination for the next hour or so. So tonight's show, like always, is for informational purposes only. So my guest, like tonight's no exception, Catherine's not going to be doing any readings, but if you do have any questions related to, to mediumship or spirituality, the afterlife, or anything on that topic, please feel free to call in, and I'm sure that we'll do our best to answer it. And let me just pull up the number. It's 1-888-627-6008. So let me just tell you a little bit about Cathy. She is a certified medium with the Forever Family Foundation, and her gift of spirit communication has been with her since she was 9 years old. She's a psychic medium, clairvoyant, and is trained at the esteemed Arthur Findlay College in Stansted, England. She's also leads guided meditations, which help students utilize their gifts and develop their hidden psychic abilities. She's the author of Seeing More Than Clouds in Your Coffee, Stories of a Psychic Medium in New York City. Her website is dreamcentralstation.com. So all one word, dreamcentralstation.com. Okay, with having said all that, Cathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Roman. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome.
I actually have a second book out now too. It's called And She Danced by the Light of the Moon.
I'm sorry, what is it called?
And She Danced by the Light of the Moon.
She danced. Isn't that a line from a Mother Goose?
It's funny because I was on George Norrie, Coast to Coast, and he, in the middle of the interview, he actually stopped and said that was his favorite song from the famous Jimmy Stewart movie. And the Christmas movie, remember the Christmas movie with Jimmy Stewart? Everybody
yeah. Is that It's a Wonderful Life?
It's a Wonderful Life, yeah. And there's a song inside that movie that talks about dancing by the light of the moon. And in the middle of the interview, the famous George Norrie starts singing the song. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was like such an honor to be on the show. But then to have him singing on the show and during my interview, I was blown away. Yeah.
Yeah, George Norrie, he's fascinating. I used to listen to his podcast all the time back in the day, and I'm sure he's still doing it, and he's always touching the like the unexplained, the psychic stuff. And yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Yes, he's tremendous. Yeah, a lot of my friends have been on that show, and it was such an honor to be on that show because my dad actually listened to that show for many years. My dad was always kind of inquisitive about all of this. And so it's kind of interesting. I have a funny story about George Norrie because for 8 years I worked in Salem, Massachusetts, and for a majority of those years I worked under Christian Day, who's the most famous warlock in the world, and I was driving up to Salem. I would leave at like, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And then I would call my dad and say, hey, Dad, I made it and I'm going to be working for 12 hours. And my dad, one Halloween season, said, you're working for Christian Day. I finally know who he is, because he was on Coast to Coast. And I said, oh my gosh, it was so wild, because my dad was a very strict Roman Catholic. So, he kind of really turned the corner having me in his life.
Right. How does that pan over with your, first of all, is your dad still on this side?
No, he
Okay.
passed. Yeah.
Well,
He's
sorry
in
to
the
hear that.
afterlife since
Hmm.
2016 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did he
But
take to your abilities and all of that, being a
yeah, I
Catholic?
talk about it in my first book, Sing More Than Clouds in My Coffee, but in your coffee. But he didn't really like it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I was a very young girl with him, and he and I were buddies. And whatever he wanted to do, I wanted to do. So he was really into fishing. We used to go out and do fishing, and we used to go out and, do some shooting at the rifle range and all that. So I was kind of like the son he never had in some aspects. But one day he said, we're not going to go regular fishing. I'm going to teach you how to go crabbing. So he took me down to this dock in New Jersey and he explained it. I'm going to drop this kind of net in the water. And when the net hits the water, the doors of the crab net are going to open and the crab's going to go in. But don't touch the rope. So my dad was like really kind of a big teacher. So he started to walk down the dock and he was talking to the other kids. And I heard, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. It was getting louder and louder. So I said, I better pick it up. So I started to pull on the rope and I saw my dad turn around and he started to kind of like road march quickly back to me. So I just pulled it out of the water with all my might. And it
Yep.
was the biggest blue crab that day
Wow.
on the dock. And all these little boys came running over and they were like, oh my gosh, and it was so cool. Like, I was like, wow, this is great. And my dad was kind of astonished by it. And I started to listen to that voice. It's like an inner voice. And I
Mm-hmm.
started to have very visual dreams,
Mm.
dreams that started to become predictive. And I started to share them with my dad in particular. And he shut it down right away. And he said, we don't have dreams like that. And we don't talk about dreams like that. And then when people started getting sick, and I started to talk about one particular lady that I thought she had passed away, and then finding out she did, my father was very alarmed by it. And he said, don't talk about that. So I just decided, like, if he's turned off by it, a lot of other people in my life that are important will be too.
Yeah.
I didn't really share my gift until I came back from Iraq. I joined the military in my early 20s, to get schooling, paid for. And
Yep.
I stayed in and I just very competitive and I kept going on for higher ranks. And when I was in Iraq, my battle buddy said to me, you really got to be working with the public. And I said, well, if I get out of here, because it was very dangerous when we were there, I was almost killed like 3 times. I said, I promise you, I'll do it with the public. And I held my promise when I came home. A lot of people in the psychic, fair, kind of fair circles contacted me and I started doing coffee readings. And then I started doing a lot more than just my coffee readings.
Right, right, right. Wow. That's a
Yeah.
fascinating history. So, do you like when you were in Iraq, were you able to like foresee anything happening that kind of kept you safer what it would than normal, you know?
Yeah, I can't really say safer. I didn't really have a lot of control with where they were telling me to go and what I was supposed to be doing. But there was a lot of times I mentioned 1 or 2 times in the second book that I wrote. But I mean, I don't want to give the book away, but I
Mhm.
was very in tune to what was happening or had happened in an area. So
Okay.
there's 1 or 2 stories that I tell in the book. I can't really talk a lot about
No,
things
that's
that
fine.
I did related to the military, but
Of course.
you know, any environment where something has happened that has been traumatic, I don't even have to leave the United States to be able to feel that. And a lot of us do, feel things, we're empaths. So we feel energy, we feel, either like when my paranormal work, I go into a building, or I go into an area that's supposed to be haunted. I feel things. But it's very energetic, it's very, very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Circumstances that you're in that you really can't get out of, it's really more of a stressful situation
Mm-hmm.
because you're there. It's not like I could say, well, let's leave Iraq, because I think everyone would have agreed with that, but there's circumstances here in the United States. There's places that I've gone, in certain neighborhoods that, I just feel like I really need to get out of. Also meeting certain people. I've met some people over many years of my life that have either lived a very difficult life or involved in a very difficult circumstance. And I can feel it immediately. It's before they even tell me their name, or I can see them across the street, and I automatically know that, this is not someone I really want to go toe to toe with. And it's really the energy. It's not just sizing someone up or looking at someone. It
Mm-hmm.
sometimes takes you by surprise. Sometimes when people say, oh, that person's wealthy, you would never know, the way they're dressed. Sometimes when you talk about energy, you would never know. It's you can't just size up someone by the way they look. You have to feel it internally. You automatically know you're going to get along with somebody or something, but it's kind of a different. Have you had that experience, Roman?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. I chalk it up to like a kind of like intuition. But I'm not I don't consider myself to be psychic or anything like that, or clairvoyant or anything like that. But sometimes things have happened, and sometimes something's gonna happen and it just
Yes,
does. And there's like and there's nothing you can do to prevent it, but
that's
it's gonna
right.
happen.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And
But you're right, though. Everyone is intuitive. I believe everyone is psychic. I feel some people aren't really aware of how psychic they really are.
right.
And that's why I think sometimes people have that little freak out episode, like, oh my God, because they thought of something and then a few minutes later it happens.
Hmm.
But very often telephone calls, thinking of a person, there's a lot of that where, you just thought of someone and the next day they call you. So there's really a big link, I believe, in energies between people.
They're definitely, yeah, and we can't even understand it because, like I say this often on the shows, is it's our brains are really not what we think they are. They're more like reducing mechanisms. They're like antennas that pick up information from all around, kind of thing. And it's the old analogy that if you smash the TV, okay, let's say the TV's like our brain. You smash the TV, you didn't kill the weatherman. You know what I mean? You just ruin the receptor that
That's
picks
right.
that information up. Yeah, the TV won't work, but yeah, the information is out there, and we just, we haven't even tapped into it. It's too, I mean, I don't know, quantum physics and all of that. It proves that, consciousness is what dictates reality and not the other way around. And they're making a lot of strides with that, and they're coming up with they're using that principle to come up with some really neat inventions like quantum computing and all of that, which is gonna make the speed of computers infinitely faster than what they are today, but we're still a long way off. And this
Yes.
whole thing with artificial intelligence, it's scary. I just came back from a seminar where they're talking with the New York State. They're talking about cybersecurity, and really, like AI is like Chat GPT is an example of AI, is being used for good. But on the flip side of the coin, there's a lot of bad people using it also to make more sophisticated, faster programming to make you part with your money. So there's, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse in terms of the level of involvement and the, how both sides, like, because the bad people are using it, they're becoming more sophisticated. Then the people that try to find these things also have to learn, and they're forced to, keep up with it. Otherwise,
Yes.
bad people are going to win.
Yes.
You know what? That's way tough, tough. Just the,
Yeah, but
just the way of the world, you know?
Roman, you bring up a good point though, because I do so much work in grief. And it's not just our family members and friends that pass away, but it's also our animals, our pets. And
Hmm.
a lot of people know me. I'm like the cat woman, but I've had a lot of particular pets in my life. And it was about a couple of years ago, but my favorite cat, she's in my second book. Her name was Meg Ryan. And she was like a internet sensation. I was always dressing her up and putting hats on her and everything. And when she was very sick, believe it or not, the vet was trying to tell me all these different things that they can continue to do to extend her life. And I felt very badly about it because I knew she wasn't well. But I also started to think like if I could find another Meg Ryan, the cat lover in me thought, wow, that would be amazing if I could get another Meg Ryan. And I got involved in a conversation with someone, and I was alarmed to hear that you can actually pay to have your pet cloned, and you can get another pet just like the pet you had.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow, it was eye-opening to me. First of all, I didn't know that was possible. But
Mhm.
second of all, I thought, wow, that's amazing. I would love that. And then I thought of Meg Ryan, and I was like, that's not fair to Meg Ryan. She was an individual, and she had her own personality. And I said, you could see how people could be tempted. And then when I saw the sticker price on it, I was even more alarmed. And I was
Oh,
like, this
boy.
is just not right. Totally not right. But on top of it, I thought, wow, love is so powerful, in our connection, especially in grief. You could see why people would want to even start to entertain a concept like that. And these things are only possible because of all the changes that are being made. Like you said, AI,
Mhm.
it's all, 30 years ago, no one would even believe that we're having this conversation, and that's just going back to the 90s. So,
Absolutely. I
yeah.
think, yeah, it's, they're going to have to set up some kind of ethics, moral committees about, because we're not far from cloning humans.
Well,
We could do
that's
it with animals,
exactly
we could
the
do it with
point.
humans.
I know
Yeah.
that's exactly the point. Because if I
Hmm.
was tempted with the cat, I mean,
Yeah.
you could see being tempted with human.
I firmly believe though, if you went ahead and cloned Meg Ryan, you would get another cat that looks exactly like, your other Meg Ryan.
I
But
would.
I
Yeah,
also believe that the personality would be different
I
because of
do.
different
I agree. And
circumstances.
that's what I was afraid of.
Yeah.
Because if you see a picture of Meg Ryan, I mean, everyone recognizes her. I mean, but she was like a pure heart. I mean, she was so sweet. She
Hmm.
would like if someone would come in my apartment, she'd go running up and rub against their leg, and she'd like entertain them. And I thought, wow, can you imagine getting another Meg Ryan and then it's the cat from like Craziness? I would be heartbroken, because Meg Ryan never showed, any kind of crazy activity, even when she wasn't well. So I think that would make my grief even worse. So it's kind of like,
Yeah,
it's kind of like a mixed bag. You don't know what you're getting.
absolutely. No, it's scary, scary times. So you were mentioning that you were on with George Noory, and I'm sure the topic must have come up about extraterrestrials and all that kind of stuff. And
Yes.
do you tap into that kind of energy, like out of this world kind of energy?
Well, it's interesting. Like 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, or 2 weeks ago, I was in New Jersey for a conference, and they call it the Cryptoid and the Paranormal Conference. They actually asked me to be the guest speaker, and I was the only medium. But as a guest speaker, and I'm certified with Forever Family, and you know, and speaking about my ability and speaking about the afterlife and speaking about the process that Forever Family goes through in testing their mediums, the crowd was amazed. This group of people that goes to these kind of conventions are really focused on UFOs. They had Dr. UFO as a guest speaker. They
Yep.
had two experts from Bigfoot. Ron Moorhead was there, who's a very famous guy on Bigfoot. And, there was a woman there that I know, Madam X. She represents the vampire, crowd. And everyone was getting up talking about different things. I've always been a believer in UFOs. I'm not sure how much I can go down the path with Bigfoot. I've spent many years in the woods, with the military. I've never seen Bigfoot. I don't know. I did hear some sounds. Ron Moorhead has been studying Bigfoot since the early 1970s. He played unbelievable audio that definitely doesn't sound human. He even had it evaluated by, I think, a cryptolinguist in the military that did verify that there was no human sounds in what the squall was. It was like a screeching squall sound, but I was fascinated. They invited me back, and it's a great crowd of people. Every time I go out and I meet people or I listen to George Norrie, I learn. We can't be experts in everything, but I believe they learned from me that day about the afterlife and forever family, and I believe I learned from them.
Mutual learning. I love it.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Absolutely. Um, so you're practicing and you reside in New York, right? You're still in New York City?
Yes, I actually live right outside of New York City, in the town called Bronxville. It borders Yonkers.
Oh yeah, I know Yonkers well. There's a big I'm of Ukrainian descent. And there's a very big Ukrainian community in
Oh,
Yonkers.
sure, I know it. Yeah, there's a church there, and it's
Hmm.
it's right off of Shawnard Place.
Yep, and they're
Yeah.
having their festival there this coming weekend, actually, the big Ukrainian festival. So
Yes,
look around, you want some
yes,
pierogies and really
yes,
good Ukrainian food.
exactly.
That's the place to go. It's coming
That's
up this
right. I
weekend.
grew up with a Ukrainian family, and we used to go to Easter with them,
Oh,
and they
nice.
would have their baskets blessed in that church.
Yep, yep. We do that. We do that here. I'm in Albany, and
Oh,
we have a couple of churches, Ukrainian churches here in Albany, and we do that as well. So it's fun it's fun to be Ukrainian. What can I
yes.
say? It's
Yeah.
good to know other cultures, and as a
Oh,
Ukrainian,
yeah.
I get to see mingle with other cultures at different kind of things, and it's really good to have that because let's face it, people need to start tolerating other cultures in
Yes,
the
there's a
society.
big push for community. That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The United States was based on immigration. There was no people here. Well, I mean, North American Indians, but everybody that came here was an immigrant. So, I think, it's strange times and it's obviously different now than it was, but something's got to be done with that. What's going on now is just really not good. I think, with the border and people coming in and I feel for these people because they're escaping persecution and the worst conditions to have a chance at, freedom in America, but it's a hard decision. It's a hard decision to make. So, hey, we got some questions from some of our
Oh, good.
listeners. So I'll be throwing them your way. Like,
Okay.
all right. So one person wrote in, do your guides ever help you in making connections to someone in spirit? Like, do you ever use your guides to help make that connection, or do you just do it on your own?
Yeah, mostly I connect with my guides in meditation.
Hmm.
So every time I sit for all my readings are done by Zoom. So I sit in meditation by myself before I do the reading. And I
Hmm.
connect with my guides, but when I do the reading, I'm connecting, making my own connection. So a
Oh, okay.
lot of times my guides will show me things that are happening around the person, but it's mostly me connecting with their loved one. That connection's coming from me in the reading.
Oh, okay. No, that's good. Somebody else wrote, how do you determine if you're getting the information that you're receiving is from someone in spirit as opposed to um, psychic information coming from the living?
Yeah, so a lot of us get that question time and
Mhm.
time again, and that's one of the main reasons why the Forever Family Foundation exists, because that's part of how they do the testing on us. It's
Mhm.
called validation of spirit. So the information that we bring through is valid to that person only. So we bring through spirit, we describe who they are in relationship to the person, that we're reading for. The person that we read for, we call them the sitter.
Yep.
So what that person means to that person. Are they a sister, a father, or a child? We tell them that positioning. And what they like, the way I work is I'm clairvoyant and clairaudient. So it's whatever they tell me and whatever they show me, I repeat to the person.
Okay.
Sometimes I actually hear like a whole conversation. So I'll hear a conversation that the person that I'm reading for had with their loved one. And that brings the reading to like a whole nother level. That's not psychic information. That's information no one would have. It's not
Right.
just, oh, you can Google this or you could do that. It's
Yeah.
private information that only exists in their family or only exists between two people. And that's what we call validation of spirit. And that's what all of our testing is based on. It's a very unique reading and it's not anything general.
I've heard of experiences where it's even deeper than that, where you will tell somebody, a medium will tell something to the sitter, and the sitter then finds that to be true later. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah, that
So,
happens very often because they didn't know the story or they didn't know the scenario and they share it with someone else. Very often I get an email back and they say, I'm sorry, I was so adamant and I kept telling you no, no, no. And then
mhm,
they went and checked it out. So that to me is actually even better, because
yeah,
they know that they didn't, we always claim we know everything about our loved ones, but it's impossible to know everything about our loved ones.
right.
Sometimes there's stories between people, like two brothers. I had a very interesting story with my uncle after my father passed away. And I thought I knew exactly the story. And when I shared it with him, he said, no, that, it was during a time they were merchant Marines or something. And he told me the story a different way. And
Mhm.
all these years, I thought I knew the whole story and I didn't. So that would be, again, validation of spirit.
Of course, absolutely. So, a normal day in your life. I mean, do you turn off your abilities during the day, like when you're doing shopping or whatever?
Yeah. So
Something
my
maybe like,
life, yeah, my life is very particular. I'm very different. I work Monday through Friday as a registered nurse. I work for a VA hospital.
oh,
And
okay.
in the evenings, I do my readings, and weekends I do my readings. They're all on Zoom. But I also have a radio show. And my radio show is pre-recorded.
Hmm.
And once I pre-record the radio show, I send it down to Florida and it airs live every Thursday. So a lot of my guests are actually in the music business. Some of
Nice.
the guests are witches from Salem. Some of the guests have been to NYPD, 9/11, Navy SEALs, just a mixture of people that I know, but a majority of them are music people. And the focus of my radio show is it's called Bringing the Darkness to the Light. And it's basically talking to people about their lives and their career, but also about, they see a change in their life. So either they realize that their path, early on in their life was music, or that something happened and they bring, it comes upon them. Like I have a couple of really good interviews coming up that I don't want to give away, but it's pretty amazing the things that happen in people's lives. I talked with a police officer recently that didn't know he was going to be a police officer. He went out to California and started to do soap operas, and then 9/11 happened and he couldn't get back to New York fast enough. He said, I want to come home. I want to come home. And when he came home, he said, I want to be a cop. I want to be a police officer. So that 9/11 actually changed his path. I spoke with a Navy SEAL that couldn't believe he was, really super fit. He showed up to Navy SEAL, and there was like 212 guys or something. And he said one after the other, one was more fit than the other. How are they going to whittle us down? And he said 3 days in, he said that 212 went down to like 26, and I think they graduated with like 26. So it wasn't really physical strength. The lesson was the mental stress of getting through Navy SEAL school. And through that whole process, he learned that he was really a leader because he became a team leader and he was encouraging others. So a lot of these interviews, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I have the show. It came to me in a dream, Roman. I had a dream I was going to have a radio show, and I was like, is this really possible? You know, so I believe we are shown signs about helping other people, but it'll also help, not just helping the people I'm interviewing and promoting them, but everyone that's listening. Everyone that's listening learns a lesson, or everyone that's listening gets some sort of motivation into their life. So it's a continuous effort of helping people.
Cool. Hey, we got a listener.
Oh, good.
We got Lisa from Utah on line 1. She's gonna be yeah, she's got some interesting questions. So Lisa, welcome to the show. Oh, unfortunately, she dropped.
Okay.
Try to call back, Lisa. We'll take your call. Don't worry.
They can write in the chat box, maybe, right?
Yeah, well, they can. Yeah, I think she had something about animals that cross over.
Okay.
We could talk about that. Probably, based on your conversation about Meg Ryan. Probably.
Yes. You know, it's so often, I don't know what her question was, but so often in a reading, I will see animals that pass over. And it's so interesting how they come through. I was reading for someone recently, and I could see the person that passes over. So I'm describing them. And then behind the person's head, I saw a cattail wavering. And I said, oh, she must have had a cat. And she said she had tons of cats. And I was like, oh, but I just saw the tail kind of wave, you know? And very often they kind of hold a leash up. And it depends upon how they hold the leash from me. I can tell if they're referencing the pet they left behind. When the leash is down, that means they left before their pet did. And they're checking in on how the dog is doing. If they hold the leash over their head, it means for me, the dog is with them on the other side. Whoa. And sometimes they show me the coloring of the fur. And that's a little tricky for people because, if I see dark fur, they're like, which one? Because some people actually are drawn to a particular breed or a particular coloring of an animal. So, then it gets a little tricky. I mean, but sometimes I'll actually come up with a name of a dog or like a nickname that they had for the dog. So I get wowed myself sometimes because I'm like, wow, that was really cool. Like that kind of stuff,
Yeah. I mean, dogs, I love dogs. And I love cats also. I love, house pets or whatever. But at what point do all animals have a conscious and a spirit?
Well, I mean, I think they do. I don't know scientifically. I mean, we have people that are probably part of the Forever Family Foundation that are probably more experts on this than I am. But when I see animals cross over, sometimes they show me like how they cross over. Sometimes they don't. I read for someone recently that had an animal pass over, and it was more of an accident. It was more of like a tragedy. Right. And turns out that was the main reason why the person called for the reading, because they just, it was such a sudden passing for the animal. But also they come through with their personality. So for me, it's no different reading about the animals than reading about the people. I have a good friend. She wrote the foreword to my second book, Dr. Cathy Nadal. And she's actually a Reiki healer for animals. So I had rescued a cat after Meg Ryan, and the cat was having a lot of problems. And I was really distraught because I had taken this from Texas. They traveled around with these rescues. So I felt bad, and I said I'd take the cat. And the cat was jumping on the counters and climbing around and just out of sorts. I thought like something's really wrong. So I contacted Dr. Nadal, and Dr. Nadal said, take a picture of the cat with your phone, send it to me, and I'll do Reiki from a distance because she lives in Florida. And I am not kidding you. Within 48 hours, the cat was coming next to me, laying on the rug next to where I was sleeping. The cat was actually going to the window and looking out, like acting more normal. And I was like, wow, that's such a testimonial, because I really felt like I'm going to have to call the animal police to get this cat. I mean, I couldn't go near it. And just 48 hours after Dr. Nadal's Reiki, she turned around, that cat, so it's pretty amazing, and I can only say that as a pet owner. But when something happens to you, you have a different perspective of it. You have your own personal, spin on it, and it really works. It's really tremendous.
Very interesting. Yeah, we have a cat that we've had for about 8 years now. He's got the life. His name is Gudzik, which means button in Ukrainian.
Uh,
And my kids love it. He's smothered with attention, like too much, But he's very patient, we never had him declawed. We have, he's an outdoor cat that comes inside and goes as he pleases, and it's great. He's got a good life. He must have been Mother Teresa in the previous life because he's got it so good this life.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, dogs. I want a dog, but yeah, they're a little bit more maintenance, and you can't just pick up and go with a dog. Cat
correct. Yeah.
gravity feeders, you can leave them all week, no problem. The cat will look at you. Oh, you're back already? Okay, well, whatever. They're a lot more independent. Good stuff. So, do you have another person wrote in? Do you have any suggestions about how people can foster their own abilities? Like you said
Yes.
earlier, that you think that everybody has a bit of
Yeah.
abilities. What can you do to foster it?
I think I always tell people to have a journal. That's really very important. Some people are not really sure what to do with the journal. Some people, the first thing I ask people is, do you remember dreaming? Some people say they don't remember dreaming. A lot of people get a lot of images in their dreams. So they can start a dream journal and they'll start seeing like a pattern with their dreams. Either they'll start dreaming of people that they deal with every day, like they'll have a work dream or they'll have a family dream, and other people feel that they don't connect with that. So I tell them to keep a journal and say what was most remarkable from you that day. I talk about it in both of my books, but we receive signs, and people say, so is that from a loved one? Or sometimes it's not necessarily from a loved one. It's a sign that you need to see for yourself. A lot of people are going around in circles, like not knowing what direction they need to go in, or if they're going over an issue about work, or they're stuck on a problem, or they're struggling through a relationship. A lot of times the universe, like right in front of us, will show us a bumper sticker, or they'll show us a sign, or we'll see a commercial, or whatever it is. It's right in front of us. So if they start writing those things down, then they take it a step further and say, when I saw this, what did it make me think of right away? Did it make me think about my problem at work? Did it make me think about my relationship thing? How did it make me feel? Did it make me feel like I can make a decision over this, or did it make me feel more confused? So I really think using the journal really helps people. Also, like some of the Forever Family Foundation mediums actually are instructors. They hold classes for psychic development and mediumship. Right now, I'm very busy with the radio show and my nursing work, so I'm not doing any teachings. But I would really recommend that someone get involved in doing that formally, but doing it with someone with the Forever Family Foundation, because they've been certified, and they're, that's really the key. A lot of people could hold a circle, but you can't always, feel that you can validate the information if you're not sure of the person's background or the source of the information being shared. So I found that very interesting with Arthur Findlay College when I went over there, because they're very, very strict. And I went over there almost in a because someone had saw me do some work with James Van Praagh, and it was actually Siri Bernstein, who's with our Forever Family. She took the camera and she filmed me giving a reading at a James Van Praagh event. And I took that film and I sent it to Suzanne Northrup, and Suzanne Northrup said, send it to John Holland. When John Holland saw that video of me giving the reading, he said, she needs to go to Arthur Finley. And I went to Arthur Finley because I thought, I need them to tell me, like, should I be doing this, And when I went there, I was in their top class. So I needed that validation for myself, but I also needed to hear what they felt was evidence of spirit. I had Simone Key on my radio show as a guest, and she talks about like the British way. There's a difference in the cultures, like I talk with my hands, I move around, I have a New York accent, British style is a little bit different, but they also like, well, they're more
proper, prim and proper.
Well, they're more proper, yeah. And she kind of jokes around when we talk about it, because she said when you're kind of delivering information, you don't want them looking at your hands more than hearing what's coming out of your mouth, like you don't want to create a distraction in some way.
So they're poised, they sit on their hands.
Arthur Finley, in some way.
How long were you there?
I went there twice. So there's a like 7-day class. And then I think it was maybe 1.5 or 2 years later, I went back for another 7-day class. But both times I worked with Simone Key. I think she happens to be one of the best tutors there. She's very strict about delivering information. You have to kind of hit 5 marks. You have to say like who the person is, how they passed, really like detailed information, like did they have a nickname or what were they known for? Usually it's about 5 things, but she brings you through, at least the courses I took with her, very unique exercises. I was talking to her recently and I said, I remember you blindfolding us at one point, and that was a real exercise where they took the talking medium blindfold so that you can't see anyone in front of you. And as you deliver information, everyone in the semicircle around you is raising their hand if they can take the information. So the more information you give, it's not going to match everyone. So hands will start going down. So at the end of it, they take your blindfold off, and then the person that can take the information delivers the feedback. And that's really what you need to know, because when you're doing this, you might think, I'm doing it, but to get the feedback, you really realize how deep you can really get the information from spirit.
Yeah, very interesting. By the way, do you have a microphone cord that you might be hitting or anything? Because there's crackling when you're talking. It's not that bad. It comes and it goes.
Oh, no, I don't.
You don't. Yeah, I don't either. It's just we just have a bad connection, I guess. Don was pointing that out to me in the chat.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, we hear you.
Oh, all right. I don't know. My cats might be running around in the background.
Screwing up your Wi-Fi. Who knows? Nah, it's definitely tolerable. I've had much worse.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, how do you keep up your energy level? You're working as a VA nurse, then you come home, you do readings. Doesn't that drain you?
I'm very active. I've always had I was in the military for 30 years and I retired in 2021. I retired as a colonel. And I think it was my military training. You could really learn to really just stay focused on one task at a time. And a lot of my leadership training, a lot of my military schooling really taught me how to block things out. The military training, unless you ever went through it, you wouldn't understand. But the way they teach you, some people have things that kind of bleed over into other things. They can't stay focused where one activity bleeds into another activity, and I can kind of block stuff out. And it's just really the military training. They make you realize that the thing that's right in front of you or the thing that you're involved in is the most important thing right then, right there. Because we deal with life and death a lot of times in a combat situation, you
Right,
can't
right.
allow distraction or
Gotcha.
outside sources to take you off course.
Right, right. So that, yeah, that definitely helps. And um, did you make aware of the fact while you were in the military about your gifts, and did they apply it somehow in those
Yeah, no.
situations?
It's funny though, because when I said I would work with the public, I started getting a lot of radio shows and interviews, and I said I have to tell the commander. So the higher rank I got, my commander was a general. So every time I had a new commander, I had to sit with the general and say, I might be on this radio show. I have this, website. I have that. And every one of them was like, yeah, like shrugged their shoulders, like, yeah, so what, whatever,
Whatever floats your boat, right?
Yeah, they weren't really like telling me, no, don't do that. They know from my training that, I'm not going to discuss the military or any
Of
military
course.
operations or anything that's considered
Right.
that way. But it's interesting because, if you have conversations with Lloyd Auerbach or a few of the other guys that we have in Forever Family, they'll talk to you probably a lot about military and them using psychic resources in the military. That's already been well documented. I think there was even a movie about that. But that's a special elite force that they were involved in doing that research. But I didn't do any predictions. That was not something that I was there in Iraq for. That was not something that I would do in the middle of doing my operation and doing my work. Again, I was focused on being who I was, where I was. But they do use things like that. I mean, it's been well documented. But
Mhm.
my soldiers actually, till this day, they would say we drive through an area and they go, okay, Colonel Nadal, you feel anything? You see anything that we don't? So it was always kind of like a joke. But
Not a joke. You're here. You got
yeah,
them
yeah,
through
yeah,
it safely. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Wow. Yeah, you threw some names there in the show. Lloyd Auerbach. Yeah, I remember
yeah.
um, having
Yeah,
a
I also
conversation with
had
him.
Dr. Cal Cooper on it as a guest on my radio show, both Lloyd and Cal Cooper. And both of them are fascinating. They're parapsychologists. And that's a whole, Dr. Cal Cooper is amazing because he has this book called Telephone Calls from the Dead. And so many people have had, where their phone rang and the call came from a loved one. And this goes all the way back in time. So speaking to him is really, really fascinating. And Lloyd's been in the field for it must
Oh
be at
yeah.
least 40 plus years. He was very involved going back to when they started to do like
Mm.
early in his career, I think it was Ghostbusters. He talked about when the movie came out, he
Yeah, he
got,
was an advisor for that or something, right?
yeah, well, he got featured in a very big newspaper in the San Francisco area because everyone was at a parapsychologist conference except for him. So he was the only one that didn't go. So he actually got involved with doing the whole interview and everything.
Right, right, right. Wow. Speaking about people that are associated with Forever Family Foundation, that Piero Calivieri, he,
Yes, I've seen him speak
yeah, it's
publicly
his
at one of
birthday
the
today, so I want to say happy birthday to him.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, he's a wonderful man. I've actually spoken to him and saw him at one of our conferences. And early on, he was giving out one of those memory sticks with his work on it. I think I still have that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he's done a lot of work,
Yes.
done a lot of documentation, a lot of work, a lot of studying, and he guarantees that if you take his course, your grief will be gone because you will know without a doubt, you will know that there's an afterlife, and our loved ones just a heartbeat away, pretty much. The way Fran used to say all the time. Remember
Yes.
that?
Oh, yeah.
Used
I
to end
miss
their
Fran
shows.
so
Oh, I
much.
miss her too.
She was really, really a gem. She was such a gem.
Down
Even
to
on
earth, like
email,
really lady.
I would email her a lot. And you could hear her laughter in her emails. She had just a way of saying stuff,
Oh yeah, she had this cackle about it, like the way she laughed. I love it. I can still hear it now. It was really, and she couldn't tell. Boy, could she tell a story. I
Yeah,
remember
she was
being at
really
the
great.
Ginsburgs one. We overnighted because they had a medium thing, and then all the medium stayed over, and it was a lot of fun. And yeah, she was just a riot. She's I'm sure she's partying it up in heaven right now. So, which is
Yeah.
really great.
Yeah, I'm very
And with
grateful for
everything.
Fran and Bob because of their inspiration,
Yeah,
after, and finding the motivation to create something so special like the Forever Family Foundation. Bob
yeah.
has authored some books, and
Mhm.
anytime I do a public event, I bring his books with me because people really need to know, that there's a lot of research being done, and not just research, but there's people that are actually on a mission to validate. That's one thing my
Yep.
dad would talk about. You don't ever want to be called a charlatan,
Of course
and
not.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of people out there that are not doing the right kind of work.
There are a lot of charlatans, and in my quest to learn the spirituality and everything, I went before I found the Forever Family Foundation. I went through a lot of bad mediums. I mean, I had this one medium that says, like, show up with a picture of your son if you don't mind. Go, what? What?
Yeah,
So what? So you can describe him to me from the picture? It
yeah,
just makes sense. So
yeah,
yeah, there's a lot out there that are bad, but there's a lot of really good ones, and it's I'm very thankful for
yes,
discovering this whole world, because
yeah,
it's still, despite it's getting better with with social media and all that, but it's still far from being mainstream. This science, very far, and that's unfortunately the money is in the mainstream sciences, and it's just a kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I think we're making strides, and I think it's going to be common knowledge within the next 50 years. That's my prediction. It's just going to be accepted everywhere, that kind of thing. So, and I think once it is, I think it'll do a lot for world peace because God knows we need it.
yeah.
It's
I think the biggest thing is I started my nursing career early on in hospice nursing and cancer nursing and stuff.
hospice. Yeah.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is it doesn't matter somebody's religion affiliation, or everyone has this fear because nobody has kind of like had the ability to say, I've been there, it's fine, you're going to be fine, like most people that go to the afterlife stay there, and there's been a lot of research on, the near death experiences, but
Mhm.
not everyone believes in them, so
Well, it's anecdotal. It's anecdotal.
exactly,
So it's not the
exactly.
strongest. I mean, it's even though it's anecdotal, anecdotal science is not the strongest science. So,
Yeah. So
but
the biggest thing
it'll,
is with working with a population where people are imminent to be passing away, and
yeah,
working with their family members,
yep,
the idea of the afterlife or being able to explain it.
yeah,
I remember when my dad was really not well, I moved in with him and he said to me, what is it going to be like? And I said, well, I talked about this in my books, but I did a hypnosis session, and not everyone believes in hypnosis either, but I was left with this image, and it's the only image that I've been able to explain to people. In my hypnosis session, I was shown a wheat field. It was a beautiful wheat field. It was golden, and I wanted to go to it. So much so that when the therapist was bringing me out of hypnosis, I had my arm out like I was reaching for it. And he said to me, what did you see? And I said, it's this beautiful wheat field. It's golden. It feels warm. I want to go to it. And he said to me, what did it make you feel like? I said, it made me feel like that's the only thing that's important. Everything behind me didn't matter. And I think I was shown that for hypnosis. I don't know, but I was shown that. So that's the example that I tell people, like my dad, my cousin Tommy, people that were faced with, looking at, the next 30 days, they may be passing away. And that actually brought both of them comfort. And my dad was like, wow, if it looks like that, it's beautiful, but it's the bigger idea that people say, like, how could they leave me? And it's that unknowing reason why you don't want to turn around. It's
right.
just wanting to go forward.
Absolutely. You know what, Catherine? We ran out of time. Can you believe it?
Really? Oh, wow, that went so fast.
It
You're
went
a lot of
so
fun.
it went so fast.
Wow.
Unfortunately we didn't have that caller, but it's all good. We talked about a bunch of
Aw.
stuff and it was so great. I mean, the last time we had you on the show was like in 2022, June of 2022. So like, you know, 2 years have passed. It goes by like
Yes.
that. But it was so great catching up with you.
Yes, yeah. I have a couple of events this summer.
Okay, please go ahead.
I'm doing Paracon in Connecticut with
Mm-hmm.
Charles Rosenet. And I'm going to be doing that with Dan Sturgis. Dan Sturgis is doing Paranormal Caught on Camera, and
Yeah.
that's on the Travel Channel. So we'll both be at the Paracon event with Charles Rosenet. And then the
When
following
is
month,
that? When is Paracon?
Paracon is, I have it, it's July. I have it here. It's July 20th and 21st in
Okay.
Stratford, Connecticut.
Okay.
And then the following month, I'm doing another event with Charles Rosenet, and it's in Hartford, Connecticut, and it's the witch trials, and that's on 10 and 11 August. And it's the first witch trial conference that we're doing because
Mm.
last year the state of Connecticut finally acknowledged, the injustices of
Oh,
witch
yeah.
hunting.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a big deal, and it's going to be in August. So I'm going to be doing both events, July and August, with Charles Rosenet.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you.
And it was a fascinating show, Kathy. And we hope to talk to you soon. And thank you, listeners. We will, I'll be back next month, in the second Thursday of the month. And until then, just, be be happy. Everybody be happy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again, Roman.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank
All the
you.
best to you. And good night, everybody.